All right, welcome everyone to Local Grit. I am Alex, and I am here with Eric Wright, who is a serial entrepreneur, tech genius. You're not Czech. Globetrotting of shiny objects, friend, ex-roommate, and all-around enormous problem solver. Eric, welcome to the show.
Well, thank you very much. It's funny that you and I started a podcast and I think we just said, let's just see if we can try this out. And it's still out there in the world. I think the's still a 3.5 hour episode of us just rapping on music.
It was epic.
And all sorts of stuff. So it's funny that we come full circle. And
at that
I've
time
been lucky enough to chat with you on my podcast. And
that's right.
There's a lot that's happened. So let's talk. Let's get caught up.
I know it's been awesome. That podcast was about music and generally music tastes and playing, I think, because we're both guitar players and we both love music. We both love metal. And I think that's what that was about. And now, scarily, it's almost 30 years later, maybe even 30 years later. And we have both ended up music, divergent paths. Now we're back into marketing, and that's what you are. You are a tech marketer. And tell me about that journey and how you got to where you are today and your business.
Yeah, it's kind of funny. And I think, actually, talk about irony too. I remember recording a Footprints Music video interview. My first attempt at can I record an interview on I don't even remember what terrifyingly bad little camera that was, probably 190p. I don't even know if it was it was basically shot on a potato. And I had no idea how to deal with lighting, but it was just fun to edit it together.
Yeah. No, that was a lot. You helped a lot with Footprints. For those who don't know, Footprints is my first business, and Eric helped a lot with that. And we'll get into that later on the show for sure. And I remember that day. It was hilarious. And I never put the video online because I was too scared, which is another story. But anyways, go ahead.
But yeah, so I basically a sorted background as an AV nerd, and also I love stories, and I love hearing and getting connected to people's experiences. I'm very much an experience-driven human, and there's something about not just having a thing occur, but being able to describe it in a way that you can make someone's hair stand up. There's something fantastic about that I studied and learned, and I had great teachers and great friends, like you, that I got to live through this. So yeah, I was a techie. I've done everything from landscaping. I was a cobbler, and whatever I did, I tried to do it at the best of my capability. And I approach every problem with the thought, what if I had to support my entire life on this solution? And so I kind of found myself always approaching things like a bit of a business. And I was lucky enough through, career paths and got into blogging, and then ended up getting into tech marketing. And from there, I was a tech evangelist for a company called VM Turbo, which became Turbonomic. It was acquired by IBM, and I worked at IBM for a year, which was crazy because I was it's a dream. It really is. If I went to 30-year ago me and said, you're going to work at IBM, I'd be there's no way. I have no college education. There's no shot that I'm going to end up there. But got lucky. And then through friendship and years of actually being as a competitor to my now co-founder, Irfan, he kept in touch and we kept chatting, and we would hang out every time I was in California when he was living there. And we just kept saying, hey, it'd be great if we could work together one day. And I remember he told me this line, and it always stuck with me. It says, don't worry. He says, lives are long and jobs are short.
Yeah.
The time will come. And 5 years later, we co-founded GTM Delta. So we do tech product marketing as a service, and we operate general GTM acceleration for technology startups. And we range everywhere from like brand new, fresh, out of stealth startups that are just launching to the market, all the way up to large. So we work with Akamai, we work with Pure Storage, I've worked with Dell. So I've worked with everything from the biggest, public names down to like brand new folks that are just cracking the market and giving it a whirl in startup land.
Wow, that's amazing. Like all of that, I have 17 different directions in which I want to go. But one thing that I
know.
most interesting, there's two things I want to touch upon. One is you're not college educated, but you are now earning a college education income, which I think is important because I did not go to college as well. And I want people to know that shouldn't be a hindrance for starting a business. So you essentially went from cobbler to Sun Life as working tech. Is that accurate? Or tell me that what skills you taught yourself to get to that level?
Yeah, there's always the trick of, you got to be careful when we hide the details in the hero story sometimes.
I know. I agree.
And it's very easy to go like, yeah, I was running a shoe repair. And from there to being a desktop support tech at Sun Life Financial. And before that, I actually did a quick stint at ICI Explosives, which was super cool. And, but I was just doing desktop support. How I got there was luck of the draw that the market was new. There was nobody that was doing that. Like, it was the brand new tech environment. This was in the mid 90s, because I'm old like the sun. So I've been around for a while.
Yeah.
But I grew up as a kid, like my dad was a system analyst. And I remembered that because when I was in grade 7 and going into grade 8, and you had to like do your little test about what were you going to study in high school to work towards your college or university to, pick your career. And I said, I want to be a system analyst. I didn't even know what it meant, but I knew I loved my dad and like I respected what he did. And it was like, he was my hero journey that I wanted to walk. And I loved learning with him. And so as a kid, I started like just watching him work and working beside him, and got into like watching database programming with super old stuff like DBase 2 and DBase 3. Like, this stuff doesn't even exist anymore. But I got lucky enough because I got exposed to that. And I started just like staying up at night and working with him and watching it. And I guess I'm lucky that my brain can visualize and witness a thing, and then I can take that in and I can replay it over and over again. I did the same thing with drums. It's funny, somebody asked me the other day, like, how did you learn to play drums? I said, I watched my friend who played drums in a school band. And I'm like, okay, that makes sense.
Yeah.
I understand the physical movement. I watched a bunch of drummers, and I literally like would just practice kind of like the back and forth rhythm. Like I have a good sense of rhythm.
Yeah.
And then when I went to a band practice and they said, hey, the drummer didn't show up, do you know how to play drums? I'm like, sure. And, it was enough because I had like visualized that experience so many times in my head, and I'd watched them play these songs that I was able to then, walk through it and kind of like be close enough. And I think that's what my tech career has always been. And every part of my career is watch something that you admire and just experience it and play it through your mind. Visualize that outcome. And then as you continue to do that, when you actually get put on the stage or put in the group or you get asked in a meeting to speak, I've played that moment in my head a bunch of times because I'm an introvert by nature, but an extrovert by career.
Yeah.
And so I'm scared to death of public speaking.
Yeah.
But I've done it so much now as a compensatory muscle that now I believe I've gotten good at it.
Yeah.
But again, I watched people, I studied just everything. It just, for me, I just like to consume a lot of style.
Yeah.
And then I build my own kind of experiential flow that I like. and it maps to other people, and you'll see, like same as music, like you go through phases where you listen to a band a lot, you start to sound a little like that
Yeah.
player or singer or whatever. So, but anyways, I was lucky that I had a very early exposure to tech, and then really struggled with math in high school. I failed math. I failed, almost twice. But then when I moved from traditional LGO into like statistics and different styles of math, it just made sense. And that started to unlock. And then I started programming, same thing. I'm not a programmer, but I learned how to like work backwards from what I wanted to achieve, and I can hack it together. So that was kind of my path. So when I was in high school, things diverged. I learned the magic of alcohol and girls, and then that was it. Like computers were out of my world for many years, and so I kind of got reintroduced. I just went from high school at 17. I left early, graduated with just enough credits.
Yeah.
And then I started working, and it was a weird thing. So there was this like kind of like 6-year period where I was just doing the thing, and I just kept finding new things to do, and then now ended up back in technology. But I was always a student of the world,
Yeah.
and I just think whatever you do, it just seems to me like I wanted to be particularly good at or like learn how to become good at
Yeah.
whatever it is that I do.
Yeah, and skills can be learned from any job. And that's what a lot of people I don't find, they don't appreciate how much you can learn. Like I know a lot about marketing because I learned a lot about branding because I worked at the wine rack where I was told what branding was and how to position things on a shelf. And those things sound, menial and not important. But when you start looking at the world through a branding eye, that can change how you see things. It's interesting that you bring up drumming because I did exactly the same method to learn how to drum. Mine was out of necessity because I had a drum teacher who quit and I needed to learn how to do drums really quickly. And I found something that was important that I find, and this I think goes with anything, and tell me what your thoughts are. But when you're present and you're diagnosing, you can get there. When you're sitting there going, I can't do this, and your inner monologue is like, this isn't going to happen. This is too hard. I can't handle this. You will get what you're talking about. And I mean, I know that your inner dialogue is much more about problem solving.
Yeah. Oh, don't worry. There's plenty of self-hate rolling around.
I'm not saying it doesn't exist.
But yeah, no, and that is, I think the power of visualization. Like I always had a very, very active imagination, and I think that's really what gave me. I got to create experiences in my internal monologue, so that when I actually had to experience them firsthand, I'd already rehearsed. Like that was really my approach. And a lot of it, and then at that point it becomes muscle memory. Now you just like keep exercising that muscle, keep learning, and push through some of those setbacks and push through learning experiences. The funny thing was my first marketing, I didn't really know I was in marketing, but I knew I liked engagement. Like I loved being able to, I love watching somebody's pupils open up because they're so viscerally connected to a conversation that you're having with them.
Yeah.
You can see it change their face.
Yeah.
That's magic to me. Like that was something I was like, how can I ask a question that can make somebody just go like, that's actually a really great question? And that was for me the thing. I love watching like Brian Linehan and like Larry King, and how can they ask questions that weren't just the same questions? Like I wanted to get an emotive response. I don't want to just get an answer. I want people to care about the outcome. And that was the thing for me. Experiential marketing became a thing because I worked at a shoe repair. And when I worked at the Eaton Center, which is a big mall downtown, I had a super busy location that cost a disturbing amount of money.
Yeah.
We were underwater every month. Like this store lost money month after month. And I was brought in I was at the company for 4 months. They're like, we're going to give you your own store. I'm like, what? So all of a sudden I'm in a new city with a store that I've never managed a store before.
Yeah, Toronto is the city too. Enormous city.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And to go from that to just thinking like, if I had to solve this problem, how do I move people through faster? How do I make it more attractive to be here? How do I learn to upsell? You know, that I want 2 to 3 items per sale instead of just one item. And I learned these tricks from like how they were running the business. And then I learned the engagement with the customer. And I actually ended up winning a merchandising and marketing award for my shoe repair from the Eaton Center, like from Cadillac Fairview.
Yeah.
Because of the way we had designed like you walk in and just like, how do I make it so that it's visually pleasurable to be here, and that I create a flow and an experience for people that come in and out of there. And that was for me just like fantastic. And I'd never even thought of it. I wasn't even going for the award. All of a sudden they just walk in and they're like, hey,
yeah,
here's this award. I'm like, super, you know, and I didn't even understand the value of it until way later. And then I thought, oh, just the stuff that makes sense to me of, if I walk into a store, how would I be incented to do more than just do the single transaction?
Yeah.
Like, well, maybe we should visually show things in a different way. What if we could, you know, change the way we do intake? What if we, you know, there was so many lessons that I was learning with no experience. Like, you don't go to school for shoe repair. You know how I learned how to do shoe repair? I got a job in shoe repair. And day one, you're sticking a sander to somebody's $500 shoes. You're like, this is wild.
And that is actually because you helped me with marketing for Footprints, and we took that similar approach to my website. And we noticed that our competitors' websites were dull as hell. They were silly things like backwards letters, and they were targeting towards kids. And I'm like, this is insulting to the parents who are paying. Like, why are we not speaking to parents? And we came up with, and I say we, meaning you, came up with the slider, which is now ubiquitous. Like I hate it now, but at that time in 2010, having a slider carousel, having a carousel on your main homepage was revolutionary. And I got enormous compliments on that. And we did take and looked at what is the experience of the customer. And I find that people think that it's about your ads, it's about your website, it's about your social, and those things are important. But if you have a horrible experience for your customer, they are not going to come back no matter how glitzy you've done anything. How pretty your website is. And it's amazing how many people don't also interview their customers, which is what you do when you're in front of your customer. You have to know what it is that they like and what is that they don't like. And you have to revise. Like, there's so many little iterations that you need to do. But I noticed that the website was the first contact at that point. Google was still in infancy at that point. 2010, it was the dominating power, but it wasn't what it is today. And so we weren't even really thinking about search. Like, there was no, exactly. It was more like, here's a presence that we could create. And another thing that we did that I think was early, or I mean, it was less common at the time, was we mapped the view from the website to the experiential on site. Like, we did the logo on the wall, like little things that turned out to really mirror the experience so that it felt like a single thing from end to end. So no matter how they interacted with Footprints, it looked and felt the same. We used the colors, we used the styles, stuff that I didn't realize was like psychology of engagement, but for us, it just made sense. Like, I would want this to be this way. And then when you walk in, and I used to always love that. I don't know why. It was probably a small thing, but I still get joy of remembering, like, hand painting the logo on the wall with a projector,
like it's 1984.
Yeah.
But
it came out perfect. And it was like when people saw it, and I'll put a picture up so people can see it, but when people saw it, they felt, because it was done by hand, I think that was just, again, like, we are holding your hand through this whole thing. That's how I saw it, in a subliminal kind of way. And I mean, the bigger word for this, which we didn't know what it was called, is branding. Really, when you think about it, that you are going to have the same experience on the website as you do in the store. And so how, with your company now, how has branding, um, how have you achieved branding with yours? Because you have a very specific niche. And so are you still doing it from this very kind of pragmatic way of looking at your customers? Or are you thinking more of like a branding, design, culture, all of those things?
Yeah, it's funny. I've got such an odd thing that, so I'm a nerd and I'm a technologist. So part of my value to my clients is that I understand their customer experience profoundly.
Right.
But my ICP, or ideal customer profile, is not the nerd.
Right.
Their ICP is the nerd. My ICP is the head of marketing, the CMO, the demand gen person, founder.
Yeah.
So I actually have different personas that I'm targeting now for my own marketing, but then I still really always push through to, I kind of treat it like it's my view. I like the idea of the influencer. The goal of the influencer was to be somebody who is a cohort representation of the audience, and that person gains an audience because they so deeply connect with that audience.
Mm-hmm.
But the problem I always find with influencers is, at some point they become self-aware, and then they believe that they are the audience, and then they now optimize for views,
right,
not for connection, not for being the audience. They forget that they are the audience, and they start to then move away from the core, which is, you have to think like the persona who's buying this product, not think like you in how would I get the most clicks for talking about this product. And so I don't aim for clicks. I did a video recently, like just a little quick one, and it hit me. I literally got out of the shower and was like, I got to do this video. I turned on OBS. My hair's down. Like, okay, so quick one. I don't write for SEO. And I said, this was the goal. Like, I am SEO. I've been writing for 30 years, well, even longer. And it just so happens that when SEO and when we built the Footprint site, search didn't exist. We didn't optimize for SEO. We optimized for the experience of the viewer, to engage the person, to drive them towards a goal, which was get them to fill out a form, get them to make the phone call, get them to do the thing. We call it a CTA. Like, for me, it was just like, what was the goal of the site? What was the goal of this? So for me, as an agency owner now, where we have, lots of logos and lots of people that we're helping at any given time, my value to them is that I deeply understand their audience and what matters to them. I deeply understand how to represent their voice and their style, so that I can map to the way they speak, the words they use. Because that's one of the biggest problems with most. If you go to an agency, they say, what do you want to blog about? And what are the keywords you're targeting?
Yeah.
And it's upside down. It's backwards to me. That's so broken. What I say is, who's your customer and what do they give a crap about?
Yeah.
And I'm going to focus on that. And I want, at the end of this read, I want them to care so hard about this that they want to read another article or engage further with that company, because they do what I call nod reading. By the third paragraph, they're going like, yes, like that Jack Nicholson, gif, like, this company understands my problem.
Yeah.
that's what they should leave that blog or article or video with. They're like, this person understands something. I want to learn more from their viewpoint because it maps to mine.
Yeah. I mean, it comes
That's
back
my
to,
voice as a marketer, is to like, I represent their problem and I love that problem so much. And that's what comes through. Like, don't care about the solution. Like, the solution's fantastic.
yeah,
But if you don't care about the problem, the solution isn't as meaningful. It
yeah,
sounds weird, but that really is how it translates over the course, you know. And as a client, when someone comes to me and they can write great content, but I'm like, it doesn't sound like me, it doesn't look like me, and it doesn't really, it just talks about how we can do things and we're great and that's fantastic, but
yeah.
what's the problem we solve and why should I care about what these people can do for me?
Yeah, no, I remember advising of this woman who did just these towels, handmade towels from organic cotton, and I was helping her with her website, and I was like, this doesn't, like, I've spoken to you a number of times now, and I don't really get the vibe of you on this website. I mean, you're funny and engaging, and that should be coming through on your website. And she literally said this to me: I'm allowed to do that? And I find that a lot of
Wow.
people think that. They just think that there's these unspoken rules of what they can and can't do. And it takes me back to the beginning of Footprints. And I remember speaking with marketers and agencies, and they're like, you need to send your message to all of Toronto. And I'm like, that doesn't make any sense, because I would have clients who were at, Bathurst and Bloor, and they would come for a 4 o'clock lesson through Toronto traffic in February, cold, snowy day. And they were canceling more than they were making it to their lesson. And it was a bad experience for them. And they weren't angry with me. It had nothing to do with it, but it was just an experience that isn't going to serve them. And I stopped as soon as someone told me that they were not within a 10-block radius of me. I would encourage them to find something closer, because I was like, listen, you're going to be cursing me in traffic, and you're not going to have a good experience, and you're going to have kids screaming in the back of the car, and it's going to be horrible. And I was just like, our philosophy came walk to music classes. That was our kind of unspoken thing, meaning we are serving the immediate community. And that's when I just stopped going and wasting money on postcards for all of Toronto, and just focusing on the local schools, the local areas, and building that. And it's amazing how many people think that you can have glorious SEO, but if you can't retain customers as much as, and that's one thing that I do pride myself on, we have a good, like, pretty much 70-80% retention of students, which is unusual. And I think it's because we're pragmatic, and we are parents, and we think of this ourselves. Like, our winter concert and our spring concert are less than an hour, because I don't want to sit for more than an hour at a concert with my 6-year-old who is like, am I going on yet? Am I going on yet? And so we're like, we will make multiple little ones so that we can get in and out. You got to see little Timmy play, and it was awesome. And now you can move on. Anyways, I rambled on there, but it's important how important
That's exactly it. That's the entire life cycle of the customer experience that people forget. If I can have the greatest SEO and I can get people to the site, but then they won't click, they won't keep engaging. So, and in fact, you will eventually get punished because they don't click through. So the irony is you're paying to punish yourself, because you're paying to get more reach that doesn't convert, which algorithmically then becomes a problem over time, because you're, in the end, it's really is poor targeting, even though you're getting first traffic. but you're not really engaging that person, and you're not engaging the right person. And that's why getting to the page is only the first step. And we see this all the time, especially with early stage companies. It's very difficult to have the site that tells the story when you don't have that many customers.
Right.
So we have to create that experience as if this was a larger place, but then make sure that the calls to action and the type of engagement is, become a design partner, without saying become our first customer, because no one wants to hear that one. Like, how many customers do you have? Like, we're working on it.
Yeah.
And even just like small little things. Like, I laugh, like, this is my shirt, that here's a classic thing, like simple catches.
Yeah.
And I walk around the show floor at an event and people stop me every 5 feet because they see Run. And I had one guy, he goes, "Oh, that's awesome. I saw Run DMC at, wherever." And I was like, yeah. And I look, and he goes, "Oh."
It's amazing. That's great marketing from DMC, because that is something. But what I love about that story is that your experience enhances your overall strategy, as opposed to being tactical, which I find marketing has definitely become just tactic based, as opposed to having an overall strategy. What are your, tell me about what.
Let me get my black nose strip so I can do my best Alex Hormozy impression, and bless Alex and the school, like, organization. Like, they do some fantastic stuff. But I really appreciate where they are now versus where they were 5 years ago, when it was just all over the place. And I think a lot of the stuff, like, Gary Vaynerchuk, I think you and I actually probably have even talked about this. I hate the sort of struggle porn type of people who are like, if you're not grinding, you're not breathing, it's grind or die. And like, there was a point where Gary V was all about that, like 23 hours a day, grind or die, and then he suddenly he had seen the benefit of that, and it's well deserved, right? And he has financially set himself up for hopefully generational wealth for his family, and in a good way. I think he genuinely does good stuff, but it really felt super just like aggressive. And then, all of a sudden, 5 years later, he switched to like, hey, here's a hand-drawn picture of an aardvark I'm going to sell as an NFT. Like, he was just doing like fun projects. And now that was the real Gary V. And now I cared about when he was doing Gary V wines. I'm like, this is the guy that I want to connect with now. And that's different, like that's why I think why I put myself kind of in front of the brand quite a bit still, because it's a very, like, that's part of the value, is that we don't just write. Like, I'm not the best writer. Gosh, I'm terrible. I've got ADHD. I've got dyslexia. Every possible thing is against me. I constantly misspell words. It's brutal. So I'm fighting a fight every day to keep content moving and not make a mistake. There you go. Exactly. Grammarly.
This is my favorite tool. I'm not sponsored by them. I'm an ambassador of Grammarly, but it's like, I need it.
So things like, I'm not the best writer and my team aren't the best researchers, but what we are the really good at, and I would say I believe that we are the best at, is understanding the experience that needs to be created for somebody to become a customer that will understand the value, attach it to the outcome that they need, and do so in a way that both sides win, because it is a battle, right? Like, when you're selling a product, you have to extract value from a customer, and that customer is trying to extract value from what they're spending on your service or product. And each side is at odds, technically, right? But how do we do that in a way that it doesn't appear that way? And that's what we need to do, is really like the science and the psychology of human engagement. that's something that turns out in the videos and the things that we do. So, there's a reason why all this stuff. The other thing that's the simplest possible thing is, I think Frank Zappa said there's two things you have to do. One is to not give up, and the other is to keep going.
Yeah, it's true.
Like, my podcast has no business being as successful as it is. The main reason it is because I didn't stop.
Yeah. No, it's true. Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead. No.
There is one other quick thing that was funny. So as if there's never such a thing as one other quick thing with me. But so I have 10 years ago, I was working for VM Turbo. We just rebranded to Turbonomic. We had this big splash at an event. It was a huge event, and I wanted to invite people to speak in our booth that were not at all related to our company. And I called this thing a webinar series, and then I brought it into the booth, and I called it Tech Forward. So I bought a domain called techforward.io, and I just did this 3-part webinar series on Kubernetes, OpenStack, and Mesosphere. 3 things that were literally brand new and very early. And the company said, like, hey, do whatever you want. We trust you. I was the evangelist. They gave me a lot of freedom. So I did this, and I even have a picture. It says techforward.io. And then, like, about 6 months later, life happens and everything happens. And there was no money or time to put towards that as a brand. And you got to be careful. You can't create a bunch of side brands. It can get risky. So I said, okay, we'll shelf it. But then when we actually we're about to get transferred and bought by IBM, I just bought the domain and transferred it out. And then 7 months ago, I lit the site back up, and I started a media site where we do like media news coverage for technology. And so it's techforward.io, but like that idea has been there for years.
Right.
And literally it's a 10-year-old brand. And the irony is that I get crazy good click-throughs because it's a 10-year-old domain.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so there's this persistence that needs to be there. And it's tough because when you're searching for revenue, you don't have 10 years. You've got a very short runway to get that revenue going. So it's a combination of doing the things that are ideas that have been around for a long time and iterating and experimenting. And then through that, learning. So now I do use stats and measurement and tools, but what you really have to do in the end is do the one thing you mentioned before, which is talk to the customers. And I speak with customers of my companies that I represent and that I help with their marketing. I talk to their customers and, prospects and other people in the tech community independent of that experience so that I can say, hey, how do you connect to this? Like, what does it feel like? What's your experience been?
Yeah.
And I learn what the problem is, because we have to understand that even what you talk about, like, that for that 1 hour a week lesson, if you don't create a good experience leading up to, during, and following that experience, that 1 hour could be great. But if the hour leading up to it and the hour after it are not cool, your really great lessons are meaningless. And that's what the whole thing is, that it's not about the transaction completion as the end of the experience. It's about what amount of real estate do you get in this person's mind? Like, we don't get to live rent free in our customers' heads. But what you have to do is be meaningful enough that they go, oh, we did this through this team. And like, then they brand attach. And that's why, like, you have to kind of be out there, and I have to like kind of, be sort of a brand ambassador for my own company. And it's for the love of what I do. I don't do it because I'm trying to like do a thing. And people are like, oh, You're trying to unlock that engagement dollar. You're like, no, my brother in Christ, this is not what I'm doing. This is just me actually connecting with a human. Like, I want to actually do this. Bill Hicks always talked about that thing of marketing. I won't mention it because there's a lot of naughty words in there, and it's but one of the best things is Bill Hicks on marketing, and that I always enjoyed that, of like, when I should have distrust out of the gate, and I want to work backwards. I want you to convince me that I should trust your brand.
Yeah.
And
I
so
mean,
that's how I approach
it, and it was something that I learned with starting Footprints, is that I had to please two customers. I had to have a child or student who enjoyed the lesson. And as we did teach adults and do teach adults, but I also had to please the parent. And there's a balance that needs to be achieved there. And so my marketing was to the parents, but our actual service was designed for the child, so that the parent would want to bring them back, and you would get that. And it showed in our retention. Like, it was important to me that kids were having fun and enjoying their lessons. It wasn't the 1980s of just, ruler hidden from the teacher and whacking you over the hands when you made a mistake. We didn't want to build that type of a business. We wanted musicians for life. And even, that wasn't our tagline, but it was our Rachel and I's driving desire, was that we wanted kids to have something that they're having a hard time during university, and they could turn to music to get through some depression. That helped me. I'm sure music has helped you, and you can get to that stage. It wasn't really about getting someone to the grade 8 conservatory and passing all their exams, and I've spoken about, friends who've done competitions, and it wasn't all about that. It was just, let's just have music as a part of your life to enhance your life and make things better. And, back to your point about, you've had this idea 10 years ago. I wanted to do this podcast around 2021, and now it's 2025. I'm just getting to it. But there's that old saying, the best time to grow an oak tree was 10 years ago. The second best time to grow an oak tree is today. And just getting started. And now that I'm venturing into this podcast, this is podcast number 11, I'm learning new skills, new ways of looking at things, which is helping me with my old ways of looking at things. And it's this you have this desire for growth and this curiosity. And you mentioned imagination. And in a way, that's innovation. And that's something that I find is missing. In fact, last night I was just grocery shopping. I was out there, and it came to me, if you've noticed, that Netflix and Amazon and the like all have gone back to ads. And now they have tiered lessons, tiered payment options. And it occurred to me, I was like, has their innovation dissolved, that they have to go back to the old format of how we used to watch television, which was, we're going to interrupt your experience with ads. When you talk to anyone, we all hate it. And we all feel slightly ripped off, especially from Netflix. No offense, Netflix. But they charge a heck of a lot more than the $9 I started paying. Now I'm paying $25 because I've got 3 kids, and everybody wants to do it. And I have to pay the highest tier. And I don't find that that's innovation. And so I just wanted to know, like, what are your thoughts on that?
Well, that's actually the interesting thing is, and actually one quick thing too on what you ended up identifying through your challenge of, like, I'm marketing to 2 people. You actually found the science of this. We have 2 personas. You have the economic buyer, the parent, and you have what we often would call our technical champion, or the user persona. So the user persona is the guitar player or the drummer or whatever. And so you have to satisfy both those personas individually, but then collectively. And that's a neat thing. And then now what have we done with changing experiences now in like Netflix, and there's consolidation. Like I was an OG, like mailing DVDs Netflix customer
Yep.
from like way back when. And it was really, really different to think of like what that experience was like. And now that they're merging and buying and, all this consolidation is about to occur, it removes competitive pressures in a way. And so as a result of that, I mean, they have to recover revenue. And unfortunately, that turns into ads.
Yeah.
And the trick is like, how do you do it in a way that matters, again, to like create the right targeted ads that go to, I don't want ads. It drives me nuts. Like I got satellite radio early because I just hated getting in the car and the first thing you hear on your 5-minute drive is a 4-minute ad. You're like,
Yep.
I can't listen to this. I just want to listen to music.
Yep.
And then it was podcasts. And so I think patterns of consumption have changed. We binge things more. And I think there's probably just like behavior patterns have changed to adapt to ads.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm always torn on how effective ads are. I don't actually know. And I'm actually reading a good book from a great friend, and she shared something with me. It was called like Scientific Advertising. And the book is from like 1920.
It's ancient, and I have read
like,
by Claude Hopkins, I think is his name. Yeah, it is.
Yep.
It is the go-to for most marketers to read. But yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
And it's like it's reprinted, and I actually got the audiobook, and they adjusted the audiobook because it was like even the language is different,
I know.
It's so but like Dale Carnegie, when was How to Win Friends and Influence People written? It was in like the late 20s, early 30s. Like these are not new. We continue to now discover the science around it, but it comes to a simple thing. I walk around conferences with this in my hand, and people say, "Oh, what's the deal with the deck of cards? Are you a magician or something?" It's no, it's a conversation starter. And they go, "Huh, does it work?" I'm like, "It did." And that's it, and I always remember that when you go by and there's you go by a bus, and it says, "You just proved that bus advertising works."
Yeah.
As the sign, and like, cause that's how they want to sell you the ad. I'm like, so that's how I do this. And I like, there's little things you can do that are nuanced things that can create the experience that hides the dark stuff that we know has to occur. We know we got to pay for this. We know we got to watch the ad. But can you create the rest of the engagement and the rest of the experience in a way that it offsets what we know we have to do, which is we got to haggle over the price and we got to do all that stuff. So how do I create a human experience that shows how we're connected to the story? And as a brand, I tell people, like, as a brand, plain and simple, you don't teach kids how to play music. That's not what you do. What you do is you give them the gift of music in their life so that it's a place that they can always go, that's individual to them, that's in their style, whether it's jazz or metal or classical or pop or whatever it is. You give them the gift of their own experience and understanding of the joy they can create with and for themselves that sometimes even gives joy to others.
Mm-hmm.
That's what you do.
Yeah.
And that's what matters to me. Like when you can explain that to somebody and they go like, "Oh, that's it." And when you talk to those customers, I talked with somebody who is like, they work at this massive organization, and like you'd think if you work for a giant brand, how much do you care about the brand? And I talked to this fellow for like 2 hours about like just tons of stuff about what he does. And he's a 27-year-old guy, and he works for this company. And I said, what does this company mean to you? He goes, and he, like, you could tell he was really digging in. And he says, like, it's I want to retire from here.
Hmm.
And so what I do matters to this company.
Hmm.
And how this company is seen in the world matters to my family.
Yeah.
And when you get somebody to like go down to that level and you're like, that's it. That's the moment, you know. And we are stuck in marketing on taglines, and we do podcast interviews where it's like, so Alex, tell me about the latest thing in this. Okay,
Yeah.
fantastic. Okay, next question that I already pre-wrote. And the
Right.
next question that I pre-wrote. This is great that you shared this story about somebody who was trapped in traffic. But anyways, let's get back to the advertising and print. So how much did it cost you to print your postcards? And you're like,
Right.
you missed the story. The story was
Yeah.
right there. You blew right past the thing that I actually cared about.
Yeah.
That's what matters with media and with all these things. So the ads are going to suck, and we'll probably end up paying more, or we'll find some other trade-off for it, but everything is a set of trade-offs,
Yeah.
and it is continuously finding that thing. I have a new book I'm working on right now. I can't really it's the idea behind it is sort of like what we do with like tactical empathy,
Yeah.
and the whole Chris Voss sort of thing about negotiation.
Mm.
Is I want to do the same thing, but talking about how we connect people to what technology does for them,
Yeah.
and really showing how we can highlight those engagements and find the moments that matter.
Yeah. Do you find that you've learned a lot of your lessons from doing, but also do you find a lot of books that you have read or listened to have sparked ideas? Because I find that that's something. I mean, I've read over 200 business books. I would say um, some of them half because they're just all front loaded, and you get the value at the first half of the book. But do you still find value in that even today?
Oh, 100%. Yeah. And what I always, and I give this for people as parenting advice. I always say, I'm going to give you some parenting advice, and I want you to do two important things with it. One, do nothing with it other than take it in and update your priors. You know, treat this as a Bayesian addition to your knowledge. And the second thing is, if you need more of it, let me know.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not going to batter you with how it should work. If I read Dr. Spock, I'd still be beating the crap out of my kids. You know, like I'm sure there's a book out there that told you to do that thing. So what I do is I love to like go through, and I still love reading books. What became this fun full circle moment for me was when I read a book and it referred to another book that I had read.
Hmm.
And at that point, I realized that I was network connected to this person's experience, because then, you know, I would go to that book, and then they would refer to some book that I hadn't read. And now all of a sudden I'm going to shop out that book. And so there's a lot of repetitive lessons, but I'm a Bayesian human, you know, like I just continue to listen and learn and add it to my knowledge base, and hopefully we can test it, you know, and see how it works. And I continue to test engagement. I'm not as consistent as I need to be. Everything is wrong about how I approach 99% of the stuff I do, but I'm willing to experiment continuously. And it just works out that eventually you shave off the stuff that doesn't matter. My co-founder, he describes it. He says, you don't build a business by starting with a table that you then build clay on. He says, you start with a block of clay, and what becomes the business is what you subtract.
Hmm. Hmm.
And that was such a fundamental change.
Yeah.
Is you don't just keep adding, you just listen till you realize there's a thing that I can subtract that is not affecting the outcome. And
Yeah.
then it just shifts your focus a bit more. And,
Yes.
you know, all the other stuff matters. You still have to do all these other things. And it's tough because we all want it to be faster, and we want it to be, just when we want it to just work. But the reason it just works is because we've done the experiments and we've subtracted until it was down to the crisp thing. Just like when we look and we say, think different. And
Yeah.
you can see the Apple symbol in your head when you hear me say that.
Yeah. No,
It's so deeply
totally
connected to us.
Yeah, totally. Um, I find that, I mean, I also use books in the same way. I use it to enhance the experience. I mean, taking a book, reading it, and totally pivoting your whole business model is the mistake of the book. That's not what I think people should do. And it does all come back to what is the customer's experience, and what is, um, their journey, and getting into their shoes. And I pivoted from books from your story, but you need to use these tools in a way that is going to build your oak tree. And they say that the music is in between the notes. It's actually in the silence that's between the notes, not necessarily the notes themselves. And it's amazing how, again, which we've spoken about earlier, how different experiences can make you change how you do your business. And that is, with music, there is a foundation, but there's a lot of rule breaking. And the good music can break those rules and still sound amazing. And you can break those rules, and just, if you reframe that as innovation and think about something in that way, I think that that's where you can start to have joy in what you do, as opposed to what you're saying is like, we've got to do this, we've got to do this, we've got to do this. I've worked in corporate, and that is how that is done. And there is a huge connection lost with the customer. And yes, if you have a good advertising dollar, you could possibly earn more revenue. But I think it's different than the small business owner. And I think there's two different styles of marketing. There's that corporate level marketing, which is just cogs in a wheel and getting everything done. But there is this human element that smaller businesses, which allow, I mean, I remember speaking to, I'm going all over the place here, but I remember speaking to one of the old Royal Conservatory CEOs. And he was like, one of your benefits that the Royal Conservatory doesn't have is that you can be nimble, and you can pivot things on a dime. And I think when you change how things are done with still the customer in mind, I think that doesn't mean that you have to always continue to do the same thing. You can iterate, and as you say, take things away. Any closing things you want to say? I could talk to you all day. We're going to have to do a number 2 because I love our conversation.
Yeah, no, exactly. This is great. Well, I'll say there's two quick closing things. I'll say they're new on the edition, but it will sort of sum up what we talked about. Frank Zappa, as everything should end with a good Frank Zappa reference, really described. Someone said, "Are you a great guitarist, as a soloist?" And he said, I'm not a good solo player. And he says, and there are so many people that are out there that will play an amazing thing that will make you wonder at the speed of their fingers and the skill they've acquired. And it will be exactly the same note for note every time. He says, all I know is I have a period of time in which I'm allowed to decorate your experience.
Mm.
And it may or may not be close to what it was last time, but that is, so for me, that's my thing. When I have a chance to create a content piece for somebody, I have just a few moments to decorate their experience and make it so that they want to dig in harder. And the other thing that is amazing, even with ads, like I said, the bus ads, the cards, I always say, like, simple thing, when I look at this, it absolutely is wondrous when you see stuff occur. And we call it magic.
Yeah.
And you know exactly how it probably happened, but it still makes you, for a second, like your eyes widen.
Yeah.
It creates a visceral reaction. And that's what we have an opportunity to do, and it's a gift, and I love being able to do it. And more importantly, you know, when you can make a living doing it, it's fantastic, and it's not easy, very certainly, you know, but when we get a chance to affect somebody's experience in a positive way, in some small way every day, that's success in my books.
Yeah, no, that's a great takeaway from that. I mean, it is those small little wins. I mean, my favorite Frank Zappa quote is "Don't eat the yellow snow." I think your quote
Yeah.
is much better than my quote. So I hope.
Yeah, I use the other one is for my. I think I did a video on this one as well, and I forget the exact quote, but something along the lines of like, why AI won't replace humans. He says like a computer can't tell you the story; it can only, you know, play the notes. But what's missing is the eyebrows.
Right.
And it is so funny that like that the way he described it was so perfect, that there is something to that reaction that you can create, and that is a very emotive thing, and people don't realize. I say, what's my tagline? I give emotion to technical content.
Yeah.
And you've done this, like you give emotion to music, and that is, I've been lucky enough to learn from you and have my kids learn from you, and today, you know, like my son is an amazing guitar player. Like
Oh, good.
he's head and shoulders above where I'll ever be, and because he actually studies and practices. But even at the time when it happens, I'll say, there you go. The one last thing, I like Columbo. One more thing. The experience you create may not be immediate. The most profound thing you can do is create the experience that surprises them when it occurs.
Mm.
And it may happen 2 years. It may happen 6 months. That's what marketing is. It's exposure. You're creating a future experience, and we continue to support and foundation build around that experience so that eventually they buy the experience. But with my son, you know, he wasn't attached to the lessons because he didn't like music. Like he didn't have a band that he loved. But then 5 years later, 4 years later, when suddenly music became a very different thing for him, he suddenly was inspired to go back to what he had built the foundation on. And then he built up from there, and he ran with it. So without Footprints Music, I wouldn't have an amazing guitar playing son right now.
So, and that's exactly why we do what we do. That's awesome to hear. Eric, we're going to have to do a number 2 because that sounds so bad. We're not going to do a number 2. We're going to do a second episode.
I was going to say,
let's just make that clear. We have to do a second episode. But it's a pleasure to have you on. Thank you so much for your time. And yeah, where can people find you quickly? And I'll put it in the show notes.
Yeah, so the day by day, I'm at gtmdelta.com. Easiest way to find me on everything else is I am DiscoPosse on all social media. Follow on LinkedIn. I'd say search for Eric Wright, but it's easier to search for DiscoPosse because there's a lot of Eric Wrights and there's only one DiscoPosse. So yeah, I would love to engage with folks, and if they need anything that I can help with. And of course, I've got a podcast, so DiscoPosse podcast. So lots of stuff there, but just DiscoPosse, you can't help but bump into me.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Eric. Have a great day, and we'll talk soon.